Her Story is a program that explores women, leadership, and healthcare.
My poor parents, who knew me from day one, would probably say that I was a little bit of an insufferable, bossy first child. But since most of my career track and aspiration was to be a journalist, no, it wasn't necessarily leadership. One of the fun questions that we are using with our Her Story series is, do you consider yourself an accidental or an intentional leader?
I would say intentional. And by that I mean, and it's interesting that you chose those words, accidental or intentional, not natural. I don't think I'm a natural leader. I think I'm, among other things, an introvert. I've come to realize I need a lot of time alone. And I find, for example, what we did during the Affordable Care Act in the 7 a.m. till 9 p.m, being with other people and leading, if you will, to be very draining. I have to sort of force myself to do the things that I think a leader does, to be outspoken, to deliver the bad news, as you say, to be pragmatic and push forward. So in my case, I think it's intentional.
I always wanted to be a leader. A leader and entrepreneur were not the same thing in my mind. And so I think I had a really amazing leadership opportunities while at Google. And I think there was a moment that in this conversation of should I quit my, a then dream job to go to this next dream job that was higher risk, kind of had this conversation. I remember with my dad explaining like, well, I feel like I have so much, influence and impact and work on this billion user products and like all of these things. And he kind of asked me, like, I remember him this conversation vividly. Do you want to have influence or do you want to be the decision maker? Like, do you like making decisions or do you like influencing other people who make decisions? Because that's really what it's about. The difference. Like you can influence other people who make decisions, and ultimately, like if you made the wrong decision, Google's going to be just fine. Or do you want to make the decision yourself and then live or die by those consequences? And that I think is a very stark picture of the difference of entrepreneurial oriented leadership. And I was interested in trying that out.
It was really that paper that kind of got my blood curling to be like, this is a gender gap and it's written by men and it's not framed well. And so I'm going to go out there and start talking about this. And I wrote an editorial and it ended up in being featured in the New York Times. And so that's really what led me on this path. And so I would definitely say I'm accidental. The only intentional thing that I will say that I've ever done is when I interviewed for chief residency, that first leadership job, my chair asked me, who should I pick to be chief resident? And we all knew who was being interviewed. And I said, you should pick me. and I was apparently the only one that said that. And so perhaps that was an accident, but also it was really an upbringing of my parents to be like, put yourself out there, And so I do think the intentional part about it is don't not see yourself as a leader, because that was an important key point.
I'm likely more of an intentional than an accidental leader. I'm one of 4 kids born in 5 years, and I'm the oldest girl. So to pave my way in this family, I likely learned early on that by using my voice and having an opinion, I was more likely to create an outcome that I wanted. So I'm sure that helps become more deliberate in pursuing leadership. And then I think there are, there's discoveries that you make along the way about the context in which maybe you can become a leader. And those are serendipitous more than anything else. And so there were moments like when I was in the 2nd grade, it's the end of the school year. I had this teacher, Mrs. Lemoyne, and she says, we're switching classrooms, moving my classroom to next year. So I need students to help me move bookcases and desks and such from this room to the room that I'm going to for next year. So she called, a few of my classmates to help her. And they were all boys. And I was like, I'm stronger than them. faster than them too. Why isn't she asking for more help from the girls in the room? So I stayed in from recess and I wrote her a note. And I said, girls are just as strong as boys. Why can't we help you? And, I remember being nervous. I remember leaving it on her desk. She wasn't in there. I left it on her desk. And then we come back from after recess and Mrs. Lemoyne stands at the front of the class and she says, class, I have an apology to make. And she apologizes for not choosing girls to help her move the furniture. And she's like, Carolyn, won't you choose a couple of girls to help you and you can take that bookcase? She certainly didn't have to apologize. She certainly didn't have to call it out in front of the whole class. But the fact that she did, and then she changed her course of action, that's an empowering leadership moment. And I wasn't aspiring to be a leader. I was mad. But I think that those are the kinds of things that help you. You experience something you're like that and you think, oh, if I speak up, I'm rewarded. And so it becomes less accidental over time because you start realizing, well, I want to affect this change or I want this outcome. And if I don't talk about it or I don't try to do something differently, then it may never happen.